Welcome to the video lecture for Biology 191 on Mendelian genetics. It is said that nothing in biology makes sense without an understanding of genetic inheritance. Have you noticed patterns of inheritance in your own family? Some children look more like mom, others look like dad. Some people have a strong resemblance to a grandparent. These traits are passed down from one generation to another. Generally speaking, this process happens in pretty much all organisms for pretty much all traits. How this happens is the realm of genetics and the topic of this week's lab. As usual, we have to have some common vocab before we can talk about the subject. A gene is the fundamental unit of genetic information. The gene is passed from a parent to an offspring. The gene may code for eye color or flower color, for example. Genes are located on chromosomes. An allele is the specific form of a gene. If the gene codes for eye color, then the allele represents blue or brown. The locus is the location on the chromosome where the gene is found. What words do we use to describe the genetic composition of an individual? Let's discuss the form of an allele first. An allele can either be dominant or recessive. A dominant allele will code for one variety of a trait, say brown eyes, and a recessive allele will code for a different variety of that trait, say blue eyes. To communicate these traits, we use a capital letter for dominant alleles, big B, and a lowercase letter to represent a recessive trait, little b. Homozygous means, homozygous means that an individual has two alleles that are the same. If you have two dominant alleles, you are homozygous dominant, and if you have two recessive alleles, you are homozygous recessive for that trait. If you have one dominant and one recessive allele, you are heterozygous for that trait. Genotype refers to your genetic coding. Genotype is simply a written description of your inherited genetic information. From this example, it might be big B, little b. Phenotype refers to the actual physical observed trait. That could be blue eyes, a pink flower, resistance to some genetic disease or not. That is your phenotype. Now, we have to understand dominance as well. If an individual is heterozygous and a trait is dominant, then the dominance trait will be expressed. This is called complete dominance. In this example, the white flower is homozygous recessive, and the red flower is either homozygous dominant or heterozygous. Either way, if it has that dominant allele, the flower will be red. In incomplete dominance, in heterozygous individuals, neither trait is expressed, and the resulting flower is neither red nor white. It is pink. In codominance, the alleles share dominance, such that in a heterozygous individual, both traits are expressed. The flower is neither red, not white, and it's not pink. It is both red and white. To understand inheritance, you also need to know Mendel's two laws or principles, as they are called. We'll start with Mendel's first law, the law of segregation. And we'll use meiosis as our context. You know from studying meiosis that a gamete has half the genetic material of the parent. The parent has two copies of an allele and will send only one copy to the gamete. Mendel's first law says that the gamete has an equal chance of getting either allele. Mendel's second law of heredity is called the law of independent assortment. This law can be stated many ways, but simply stated, traits are transmitted to offspring independently of one another. Let's use you as an example. Whatever allele you get for eye color does not influence the allele you get for some other trait, as long as those alleles are coded on separate chromosomes. You will be testing both of Mendel's laws in lab, and it's important to understand what they mean and how they work. It is also important to understand the genetics of blood types. You will be coding for blood types in lab. In humans, your blood type is your phenotype. That's the first column in the table on the left. You can have a blood type that is A, B, AB, or O. The genotype is described by alleles with the letter I and some superscript letter. This is shown in the second column of the table. The superscript denotes the allele. To have a blood type of AB, you have to have the alleles A and B. To have a blood type of O, you can only have O alleles, coded as the small case, or little I. Little I, little I. There are two ways to have the A blood type. You can either have two A alleles, or one A and one O allele. You can see how this is written in the middle column. And this same rule applies to the B blood type. The second part of blood typing is the Rh factor, and this is really important. The Rh factor will determine whether the immune system of a human mother kills the fetus or not. That's how important it is. The phenotype for Rh factor is either Rh positive or Rh negative. Rh negative is homozygous recessive. Rh positive can either be homozygous dominant, 2 pluses, or heterozygous with a plus and a minus. The Rh phenotype describes whether you have a particular antigen or not. Antigens create antibodies in the blood, and antibodies attack and immobilize substances in the blood that the body perceives as foreign. If a mother is Rh negative, and she has a child that is Rh positive, some of this antigen will escape the fetus and be released from the child into the mother's body during childbirth. The next time she is pregnant with an Rh positive fetus, her immune system will send out antibodies to attack the fetus and kill the fetus. If the mother knows her blood type, she can get a shot to prevent this from happening. Another topic you need to know relates to genes that are linked to the sex chromosomes. Women have 2 X chromosomes and men have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. Note that the Y chromosome is slightly smaller than the X. Some genes are found on the X chromosome and some are found on the Y chromosome, and these are called either X-linked or Y-linked traits. Remember from meiosis that the man can pass either the X chromosome or the Y chromosome to his offspring. If he passes the Y, he will have a son. And whatever alleles are on that Y chromosome will be expressed. If he passes the X chromosome, he will have a daughter, and his X-linked traits may or may not be expressed. The notation for sex-linked traits is like this, as you see on the screen.